Remember back in May when we were asked this question?
How good is Australia?
It's a good question, because the factors that influence how you might answer will be different for everyone. Over the last 3 years, the Australian Millennial Report has asked tens of thousands of young Australians a similar question. That is, how optimistic are you about Australia's prospects for success in the next 5 years? Everybody rates their national optimism between 0 and 10. So let's take a look at what characteristics are most closely associated with high national optimism and what kinds of Australians are less positive about their country. To begin with, in Alice Springs, we see average national optimism of Australian millennials has fallen each year since 2018. The red line will appear on all charts. It's the average score for all Australians 20 to 37 we polled in January of 2020. In Kalgoorlie, we'll compare men and women, and while both have shown consistent falls in national optimism since 2018, the fall in women's optimism has been significantly steeper. These are huge piles of salt in Port Hedland, and when you compare Australian millennials by location, it's clear that where you live influences your national optimism. Australians in smaller states and territories are more positive since last year, while residents of the larger states continue trends of decline in their national optimism. To the Gold Coast now, and this polling was conducted between January 20 and January 25, so it's likely that widespread bushfires and drought can account for some of the steep falls in optimism we've seen among young Australians living in regional areas. We're in Taylor Hill now to compare relationship status, and it seems being in a relationship is a much better predictor of your national optimism than parental status. Moving across town to compare work style in Carlton, and it's clear that prosperity really influences your national optimism. Those with businesses that employ staff are on average far more nationally optimistic than those who are self-employed, and certainly more than those who are unemployed. At the Gladstone Pier, if we take it that high national optimism is desirable, then one of the most beneficial things we can do as individuals is to improve how we feel about the importance of the work we do. Improvements in our feelings about the importance of the work we do isn't just associated with improved national optimism. It's also a predictor of higher personal optimism. This chart shows responses to the question, how optimistic are you about your own prospects for success in the next 5 years? Down in Sydney, we're splitting Australian millennials by education type, and while undergraduate and postgraduate university degrees continue to predict the highest national optimism, vocational qualifications also appear to provide resilience against downward trends seen in those without any formal qualifications post-high school. And when we look at how education is associated with personal optimism, again, it's university graduates who come out on top. Ask young Australians what they consider to be the most pressing environmental threat facing the country, and it's those who answer CO2 emissions contributing to global warming who are the least nationally optimistic. The most optimistic are those who worry about damage to the water table from fracking and sea levels rising. And asked about their own beliefs regarding climate change, it's climate skeptics who are significantly more nationally optimistic than those looking for more ways they can themselves help protect the environment. When asked who bears the greatest responsibility for protecting the environment, it's those looking for leadership and cooperation from federal governments who are least positive about Australia's prospects in 2020. Across the Tasman Sea to Norfolk Island, we're looking at our attitudes towards sex. For the third year in a row, it's young Australians who approve of our attitude towards sex becoming more conservative who are most nationally optimistic. In Murrin Murrin, WA, they're mining for nickel and cobalt. And when it comes to millennials' concerns about the media, it's those most worried about fake news who are least nationally optimistic. Where you get your news doesn't appear to have a huge influence on your national optimism. However, not following the news at all is consistently correlated with lower than average national and personal optimism. This is the Australian mainland's most northerly point, Cape York, and while a larger number of millennials entered the property ladder last year than in previous years, it's no longer those who have a mortgage with a partner who display the greatest national optimism. However, home ownership continues to be one of the strongest predictors of above average national optimism. At the Ranger Uranium Mine in Kakadu, we asked about our greatest financial challenges. And in 2020, it's those young Australians living paycheck to paycheck who show significantly lower national optimism than anyone else. Down to the Bangala Solar Project in Port Augusta, we look at our greatest source of stress. And those whose greatest source of stress is their personal safety are among the most nationally optimistic young Australians of all, while those worried about money and finances are among the least nationally optimistic Australians we spoke to. Finally, in the nation's capital, we asked young Australians what they most closely associated with success. And this year, the most nationally optimistic young Australians are the ones who view success as being close to or appreciated by the ones they love, which is a big shift since 2018 and the focus on recognition from work colleagues. So how good is Australia? These are only correlations, of course, but on average, a man in a relationship with a mortgage in the city and a uni degree scores his national optimism at 6.85 out of 10. While a single woman renting in a regional area without a uni degree scores hers at only 5.22.